What's up, Geeks and Gamers? It's Odin coming back with another video, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend. Yes, the box office breakdown is officially back on Geeks and Gamers, and I'm very excited to bring it back to the channel. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on them. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So let's go ahead and break things down, because Halloween Kills came out this weekend to $50.3 million domestically, making this film break even and already making profit after its opening weekend. I personally got to see Halloween Kills and it was not the biggest fan of the movie. However, money is what it is and the numbers are what they are, and because of such a low budget for this movie, it has already broken even. It is one of, if not the only film to break even its opening weekend since the time of the pandemic began, and maybe even before that time. Typically, the lower budget films that do very well at the box office or do better than their budgets can somehow break even their opening weekends. So this is not something that is completely out of the ordinary, but for pandemic times, it is especially out of the ordinary. So Halloween Kills breaking even and making profits. Not really the same story going on, though, with No Time to Die, which in its second weekend dropped 56% to make $24.2 million, and this film is now tracking well behind every other James Bond film to ever be released domestically, and with that, it is likely then going to be a massive financial failure. Basically, this film would have to overperform in every single international marketplace and get a huge bump from China in order for it to even get close to its break-even number. And even if it did that, if the vast majority of that money did come from China, knowing and remembering that the studios only get 25% of the money that they make in China because they make these crazy deals with those communists over in China, because don't ever forget that these studios work with the Chinese communists and give them millions upon millions of dollars to continue the Uyghur concentration camps, among so many other things. That is, again, not really enough to break even. That is not really enough to help the film out with only getting 25%, even if they only get $100 million, $200 million. Again, let's just say they make $100 million in China. They would only get to keep $25 million of that, which is, again, not nearly as impressive as $100 million. One other film, though, that has actually broken even and started to make profit as of this weekend is Venom: Let There Be Carnage, Venom 2. Interesting story here as well. The film that beat the original, so anyone spinning the narrative of, oh, it's pandemic times, you can't compare these films, well, then why did, in the domestic market, Venom 2 make $10 million more than the first Venom? If this is all about pandemic stuff, and if we're just going to make excuses for everything, why is it that this film somehow was able to make its money back and also be able to outperform the original? Now, I will say this much, that the legs of the film, this is something I've been covering on my own channel, the legs of the film have proven not to be nearly as strong. However, it did cross the break-even point and has started to earn money this weekend as well. But it has slowed down to the point where the original Venom has finally caught up, because even though it did better than the original Venom had better legs. It was able to make more money over a long period of time. So speaking of these films, let's go ahead and break them down a little bit more, comparing them out. So you can see Halloween Kills versus Halloween. Obviously, the budgets of these two films were very, very small, with Halloween Kills coming in around $20 million or so. I have, of course, my handy-dandy chart, which you can find over at ombreviews.com. The reported budget for Halloween Kills was $20 million. So with typical marketing costs, that's $30 million, meaning the break even for it was $45 million. Worldwide, it made $55 million. And so as of right now, that movie is $3.5 million in the black. So congratulations to Halloween Kills. Again, in comparison to the original film, or rather in the film that it is following more directly, the 2018 Halloween film, you can see that it is definitely not performing as well as that first film did. Again, 22 million versus 33, 17 versus 27, and 10 versus 16 respectively. So it is still very much not performing as well as the original, and probably won't make nearly as much internationally as that first one, but it doesn't matter when you have a production budget of only $20 million. As I said, this film has already broken even and is just making profits now. And on top of that, how they did a day-and-date release on Peacock, where if you just even had the $5 a month plan over on Peacock, you got to see this film for free with no ads. That is something else that is likely going to be a huge win for Universal, seeing that they were able to get this movie not only made very cheaply, not only break even and make money at the box office, but also have probably gotten some more Peacock subscribers. And obviously, that's where a lot of these studios are putting the vast majority of their attention on these days. And so really, it's a win-win-win scenario for Halloween and the Halloween franchise, whether you like the film or not. And personally, I was not a fan of it. No Time to Die, on the other hand, as you can see, has been a huge underperformer. Some people have tried to say, yeah, well, look, if you compare it to Casino Royale, then, hey, it did better than it on its first Friday. And then we've kind of seen the story of this film going down, right? We've seen that Casino Royale, because it was so well received, had a very strong second weekend, even in comparison to all of the others of the Daniel Craig era. And now we can see, as of the most recent update, $99 million is where the film is at. It will cross $100 million at the domestic box office, but I would say anyone would likely at this point say $200 million box office at the domestic is pretty much out of reach at this point. Whereas if you look to those other films, they ended up at this point around 131, 185, 140, and 138. So this film is tracking further back to such a degree, to such a percentage, that this film then is likely not going to get anywhere close to what the other films did, even internationally, which would mean, let's say, the lowest grossing of all of these films from Daniel Craig, Quantum of Solace, which made $754 million worldwide. If this film is tracking smaller than that in the domestic marketplace and is not going to perform nearly as well in some other markets, even if it does overperform in other markets, we can then safely assume that the film will at most get to $754 million, which is right around the lowest number it needs to break even. And that's only if you assume a more conservative estimate of how much this film actually costs. As you can see, they're reporting right here that it costs $250 million to make. However, there are certain estimates out there that say it costs closer to $300 million, and that's not even taking into account the vast marketing costs for this film as well. For me to look at this film and say, wait a minute, you're telling me that Spectre, which cost $325 million, somehow is going to cost more than the last of the Daniel Craig films? Again, you can see why that's a little bit harder for me to be able to believe. Some other people would probably point to the pandemic. Well, keep in mind, 4,000 screens versus the 3,000 that for Spectre. So you had more screens available for No Time to Die than for any other James Bond film in the Daniel Craig era. And we can, again, use the excuse of the pandemic only to a limited extent. In the end, though, No Time to Die is not performing domestically well, really at all. Where all the other films were able to easily pass $200 million, this film likely would be lucky to end closer to $150 million, which means that this film is likely going to be a massive flop. If you go ahead and look to the chart right here, I like charts. Do you like shots? I like shots. 2 cookies to anyone who catches my reference there. But if you look to the production budget for No Time to Die, the $300 million here, with marketing, and this is standard marketing, so it likely is more because of the delays and everything else. $450 million is what the total cost would be with marketing, typical standards. So the typical break-even, the conservative, really the most conservative break-even for this film would be around $750 million, and this film not likely going to make that. I have made some adjustments to the numbers because, I base all of my projections as far as how much a movie is going to make on the first 2 weeks. Because this had such a staggered release, it was really hard to actually make any predictions this time around. So I was able to adjust, do some reverse engineering math, and so this could very well end up being brilliant and work, or it could be a complete and utter failure. But based on those numbers, the 2-week number, again, this has been retrofitted, is going to be around $337 million, which would mean that the film is going to end somewhere between $482 and $675 million. And so, as you can see, the film is projected at this point to not get anywhere close to its break-even number. But let's assume that it does really well. It gets a massive China release, and it's able to make some of that money back up. As I just pointed out earlier, it still, at best, would only be able to match Quantum of Solace, which would still put it in the territory of it still likely being a film that lost money. I don't think it's going to get this high. I could see this film topping out around 650, but it really depends on how much money it gets from China. But remember, the China number is kind of a red herring because of how little they actually get return on their investment. And as I had pointed out earlier with Carnage, or rather with Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, even though it did overperform in its opening weekend, as soon as you start to see all of the days following it, that is where the first Venom film did better. These are all adjusted for inflation as well, that second weekend especially. And so if you look at second and third weekend especially, so if you look at the current numbers, you can see that Venom, the original, has now actually surpassed that of the new one. So even though Venom 2 opened up with $10 million more domestically, we see the original Venom has now reached $172 million in the domestic market. So is it theoretically possible for Venom 2 to reach $200 million like the original one did? It's possible. However, you can see that it is slowed down a lot, and that the day-and-day drop-offs have been significant enough to where it might just cap out right before it gets to that number. But we'll be following these numbers here on Geeks and Gamers, and of course also on OMB Reviews, my home channel, where I have a full breakdown of so many other films as well. But I wanted to focus on these because, yeah, No Time to Die looks like it's going to be a massive flop. As of right now, based on the current tracking, the film is at a net loss of $181 million. It still has a ways to go. Again, obviously, China release and other numbers like that could have an impact, but based on the current estimates, it'll either lose $44 million or $160 million when everything is said and done. So we'll have to wait and see on this, and we will be, of course, covering that every single weekend, every single Sunday going forward. Again, Sunday or Monday, the video coming out on the box office breakdown. But what are your thoughts about this breakdown? Are you excited to see Halloween Kills breaking even, making money after its opening weekend? Pretty crazy stuff there. Also, No Time to Die in Venom, right? Is anyone surprised Venom has, after 3 weeks, reached the point of it being profitable, making money? And it is still needing to come out in several markets. So this film is not done making money. It's probably not going to get close to the 800 plus million of the original, but hey, money is money. Profit is profit. And this is not even talking about The Last Duel, which just came out, which apparently cost $100 million to make and is making nothing. So that is also a 20th Century Studios production there. It is a holdover from 20th Century Fox. So how much of that is a financial loss for Disney is kind of really up in the air. Also, of course, I've mentioned this on my channel before, but Shang-Chi has now reached over $400 million worldwide. This film has indeed not only broken even, but also has begun making profit. Its break-even number was around $375 million, and so it has now made a little bit of profit as well. But let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I talked about, or maybe things I didn't talk about in the comments below. Again, if you like this video, smash that like button. It really does mean a lot. Make sure you subscribe to the Geeks Gamers channel for more box office breakdowns in the future. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.